Hey guys, today we're going to go over the Artifact Fragment Raid. This is how you create artifacts. Before we go over the different stages and how to play each one, we'll talk a bit about the heroes that you can use and some of the optimal lineups. Very simply, the Artifact Fragment Raid requires you to have a lot of fighters, ideally self-sustaining fighters. You can use defenders, but really you need to kill the enemies fast enough to get through the stages. You will need one healer most of the time. For the early stages you can get by with just damage dealers. The mission does end as soon as you kill the boss. So if you look at the map info, the boss is Salazar, the hero you can pull. And as soon as he is defeated, the mission is over and you've succeeded. As soon as he gets through, you lose. So the entire mission objective is to kill Salazar. There is no time limit, there is no spawn limit. It will keep going until you defeat Salazar. So for the early stages, you may be able to get by with having 2 DPS instead of having a healer down, and then just killing Salazar as fast as possible. Especially towards the later stages, this will not work, and you will need to have a load of fighters, and you will need a strong healer as well as a strong defender. But for the early stages, you can get by without a defender, you can get by with just DPS, but generally your team will move that way. So with that general kind of lineup out of the way, we'll move on to some of the suggested heroes that you can use. Now this is a pretty accurate suggestion list. If you notice, the first 4 in this list are all nightmare heroes. Some of the other recommended down here, we have Arrogance and we have Wrath. These two are definitely very good heroes. If you notice, these are all fighters, and a bunch of other defenders are recommended as well. You will need one defender. It doesn't really matter which defender it is, but you will definitely need one later on, and it will help you early on as well. There'll be less requirement on healing, but generally a bunch of tanky fighters, and especially fighters that have some form of self-sustain, are good. So especially Volker is great. She can sustain herself as well as providing healing to the rest of the group, and she does decent damage in melee and blocks, which will become very important as we'll get into some of the strategy later. Salazar is fantastic because he has a huge amount of burst potential, he has self-sustain, and his ultimate is really good at nuking the boss down quickly. Salavik is great because again he has decent damage potential, he can hit through 2 tiles when his ultimate is activated, and he has the Undying stage where he locks HP during his ultimate torrent passive. Aside from that, you really are going to want to focus on fighters, so if we go back and we go to the gallery, the first part should just be fighters. Pretty much every fighter here is going to be ideal in some way. You will definitely got a lot of usage out of all of these legendary fighters. Perhaps Cerberus would be the least useful because he's kind of niche and I don't really know where I would ever suggest using him. We'll go into that later perhaps in another video. But generally the rest of the fighters have a lot of potential and a lot of power. Any of the legendary fighters will be great for this content. As for the epic fighters, Wrath would be great. Akukazik could be quite good as well. Gluttony would be great. Scorch is fantastic here because he attacks in 2 lines at the same time. You saw Elka was suggested. That's because she has the ability to reduce defense, which is of course a very good thing. You need to kill the boss as fast as possible. Deimos is suggested as well. He has a very high DPS output. Vorov would be a very useful hero to use as well because he has very good damage output and high attack speed. But generally you're just going to want fighters. There aren't really many that I wouldn't recommend from this list. The newly released Janquar would be great here as well. So pretty much all of the legendary fighters, perhaps not Cerberus, and the vast majority of the epic fighters as well. In terms of what healer you're going to want, again, most healers are going to do the job just fine. You would perhaps want to have Eloin is the ideal one. In my opinion, she has the greatest healing potential. She can heal in other areas on the map. She improves the rage recovery of nearby allies, which is good to help their ultimates come up. And Vita will not be able to heal enough, in my opinion, for the later stages. Vortex could potentially be very good as he has the ability to heal en masse and throw some shields up. Lightlock can of course work. He has some good bursting and his extra damage will actually be quite helpful on the boss from his splash damage on his ultimate. Midan can work. She is an AoE healer and she has the ability to buff defense. And Soulless Dole is a very good one as well. She doesn't heal in AoE, but that's usually you have enough time between the attacks to heal up everyone individually when Salazar ults. And if they don't die to the ultimate, hopefully you'll be able to heal up everyone else. If not, then you may need to look at having a AoE healer instead. Depending, maybe you can get away with healers who aren't AoE healers. For example, Wanaga has the ability to chain and bounce her heals. That's probably enough to get by. But generally speaking, I would recommend some of the more AoE healers. Eloin is obviously ideal for this. Vortex can probably work with his ultimate doing enough. And Lightlock heals in 2 different bursts, so he may be able to heal up to multiple people at a time and eventually get everyone topped up before the next Salazar ult goes off. So most of the healers will work. I would just say Anvita is not going to have the healing output you will need for the later stages, especially 17 and 18, which are quite heavy on the defender at the end. In terms of what defender to use, as always, pretty much all of the legendary heroes are great for this. I quite like using Captain Reeve, which is obviously not an option for a lot of people as he was a limited hero. The reason I like him is because he has an AoE ultimate which does stun. This does help with some of the adds that get a bit closer, especially when you have loads of them in the later waves. Azhor actually has quite good potential here if you got him during the recent Fuse event. He is a limited hero again. But one of the things that I like about him is he has the ability to put shields and attack buffs on allies. That will help them survive Salazar's ultimate, and it'll also increase the damage output they have. Regulus is great if you're not too geared just for his invincibility state, where he becomes immune to all damage. This can help you, especially if things go a bit awry, just to keep him alive. King Haas is great if you happen to have him for his AoE freeze, as well as the amount of shields he puts out, and of course his Lord skills, which seem to be quite good if you have other members of his faction. Toreador would be fantastic for this, especially because he is the Nightmare faction Lord, the legendary Lord for that faction. It's probably the strongest faction in the game for this content. You're going to load your roster with Nightmare heroes, and having his benefit will make it a lot easier to deal with the boss. He also inflicts defense reduction, he is very tanky, he can self-heal. There's just a lot of benefits to Toreador, so he's probably one of the best heroes in this game in terms of the defender for this Artifact Raid in particular. Aside from that, typically in order of the other good defenders, Baron would be great since he has his unyielding state and he has the ability to buff a shield on himself. Petra will be great as she has healing. Lavania is great if you don't have many defenders, you need to fuse one. Lavania does a very good job as well. And generally, obviously, other than Zibalats, who cannot be healed, the rest of the epic defenders should do a pretty good job. Engelbun is pretty good as well, as he has an AoE damage around him. So yeah, generally you need one healer, you'll need one defender, and you'll need as many fighters that are well built as you can get your hands on. Self-sustaining fighters are especially ideal. Primarily I like Raph, because at Awaken 5 on Raph you can see that he can self-heal for 30% of his heavy blows. Volker can self-sustain with her skills, and she also helps sustain the party. Salavic is pretty good as well because he has his Undying state, which gives him health back during his lock HP at the end, so he can sustain. And Salazar can sustain a bit, though his health regen is not the best. So generally I would recommend the fighters that can self-sustain, especially Raph, as he is very easily attainable. If you're more on the epic side, Gluttony is a very good one to use for his ultimate, where he can stun people and heal. And aside from that, it is really just going to be on your pulls based on where your content is, but that is what I would recommend for the heroes to use in your team. A lot of fighters, your best defender and your best healer, ideally an AoE healer. So with that, we'll go on to the stages. If you go to the guide section, if you're on the latest version, you can see map info, and they are split into stages 1 to 5 is the same map, stage 6 to 9 is the same map, then it is 10 through to 12 is the same map, 13 to 15, and then finally 16 to 18 are the last grouping of maps. So we'll get started. First off, we'll start stages 1 to 5. So this is the team I will use for now. It is mostly epic heroes. There is Volker, but you can get her through the storyline mission. And I'll just use this team until I can't anymore, and I'll move over to pretty much a fully epic team, unfortunately. This will be entirely dependent on what heroes you have. You can get very far with just epic heroes. I just haven't built many of them up enough to be able to use them in the later stages. As you can see, I have one ranged DPS, I have one healer, and then I have 4 fighters. And perhaps I'll also take Azhor just for the sake of having him and giving him a go. So this is stages 1 to 5. I have the Power of Dominance on. That doesn't really matter for now, but I'll remember to turn it off later. As we can see, there's Salazar. He has his Slashing Blitz ultimate, the same that the hero does if you have him. 6 different strikes. They do bonus damage on each. He is immune to damage while he's in that. And then there are 2 adds, the Giant Ooze and the Parasitic Beholder. So for now, just so we can have a little bit of time, I will put down just these 2. As you can see, there's actually 3 panels here to place on. So you can take 3 DPS if you want and have a tank and just blast the boss down. And that's a totally viable strategy. You can see there are adds coming. The way that this encounter works is that when these adds reach Salazar, he gets buffed. So let me just swap people out to reduce the damage on the boss. And you can see when this reaches Salazar, he gets 1 tick. Increases Salazar's attack by 10% for every beholder he devours. This is really, really dangerous. If any of these make it to the boss, you are in a lot of trouble. So naturally you want to stop that from happening, and you do that by placing heroes to block, like this. And this goes quite quick, but generally for stage 1 to 5, you've got 3 tiles to place on. Take advantage of them, place DPS up there, place 2 healers if you need to if you're very early. I'll get into more of the in-detail strategy in the next waves where I've got a bit more time. So now we're going to move on to stage 9, which is in the category of 6 to 9. So this is stage 9. I'll take the same team again. Cool, so now you can see we have 2 platforms. I would recommend placing 1 ranged DPS down and 1 healer down. But again, for this, I will just have Azhor and I'll have Lightlock, and then I'll explain a little bit more. So again, we have Salazar attacking through the middle. We have our healer up. We have Azhor down blocking him. We have these adds coming in. A hero I like to use for this is Scorch. He got me through a lot of the early stages when I was beginning in the game. If you place him like this, he can hit the tile behind him, he can hit the boss, and he can even hit through to the other side a little bit. So there's quite a lot of utility to that. And this is pretty much kind of the team I would have used at the start. Another thing to note, The boss's slashing blitz attack, it hits 6 targets randomly. So if you stack people around the boss, it will spread out the instances of damage, and you are less likely to have your tank or one of your DPS die, which is especially important, especially in the later phases. If you don't spread out, if you don't have more heroes to soak those hits, people are going to start dying. So it's just important to keep in mind, if people are dying, that's quite likely why. And the rest of this mission follows on pretty much the same as before on stage 5, so we'll move on to stage 12 now. So for stage 12, pretty much the same as before. I'll keep the same team as long as I can. Put down Azhor to tank. You can see the layout is quite different now. The same starts for me. I would normally have more people down. I might need to now. So my priority is placing down my blockers to cover the sides. I will place down another DPS if I need to, but for now my priority is stopping these ads from getting there. I could of course put Lisa here to help, but I would rather make sure that I'm blocking than getting that extra damage down. I faced him the wrong way. He should have been facing the boss really, but I don't mind too much. And you can see I'm taking a lot of damage from the bounces from the slashing blitz ult. But now I've got some space, I can place down Lisa to help deal with the ads and to help get a bit more damage out. You can see Azhor's ult is putting shields up on people. This should help quite a lot in keeping people alive. I now have more space to put down some DPS. I might need to put someone down in the middle to make sure the boss doesn't reach here. So I'll put down my third fighter here. And the rest of it is pretty standard. You can see the slashing blitz doing a lot of damage. You have to bear in mind that fighters can only block 2 people. They cannot block 3 like a defender. So at the moment we are likely to have some trouble here. So I'll put down my 4th fighter just to make sure that nothing slips past my very unbuilt gluttony. On the top side I'm also going to have problems. So you need to make sure that you're killing stuff fast enough. This is largely the fault of not having gluttony facing the middle. Another thing to note is when the boss eats a ad, he actually gains a load of health back, which we'll see in the next wave. I'm pretty certain this team isn't going to work, but I'll show you just so you can see how that works when the boss does get that. So now we'll move on to stage 15, which is stages 13 to 15 share the same map. Again, I will keep using the same team, though I'm pretty certain this won't work. So you can see the map is quite different now. We only have a single platform. That means I cannot have Lisa down to help me. I only have space for one healer. So in this case, it's quite simple. My tank goes in front. My healer goes to the side. And now I need to be wary that the ads are going to be spawning on the left and the right side and coming for the boss. Now we see 2 portals spawn on the left. In this scenario, what I recommend is having someone who can hit 2 tiles, having a tanky person, and then that ensures that this should be okay. There's a total of 4 block to be had here, and there's 2 types of damage coming in. But now I need to make sure that I'm dealing damage to the boss, so I'll put down one of my DPS here. And you can see it's going fairly well at the moment. If I think the ult's coming from the boss soon, I'll pop Azhor's ult so I can get some shields up on people. Mainly I'm worried about Scorch. Now here is an important thing. These 2 I just blocked. They are the slimes. If you go to the monster manual, you can see there are oozes and giant ooze. Now when 2 oozes meet and they will spawn together in the top corner, they turn into a giant ooze. And the HP and the damage increase a lot, and it actually becomes quite a big problem. So rather than let Volker kill these, I will actually despawn them. I'll despawn Raph as well, just to show you what happens. You see these 2 merge, we now have a giant ooze. Now watch what happens to Gluttony. Or to Scorch rather, as he's got through. Taking massive damage, Scorch is dead. The boss has consumed it, and he gains some health back, and he gains some attack. Now there are enemies spawning on the right side as well because I've taken too long, and suddenly you're in a lot more difficult of a situation. So we'll restart and I'll explain what you should do in this scenario. So once again, you put your tank down, you'll put your healer down, and now we're going to need to defend against this bottom lane here. So we'll place as before, but we also need to make sure the oozes don't get through on the top left. And we need to be mindful of the spawns on the bottom right, and this is where this content gets quite tricky. For the lower stages, even here where we are now, this is only stage 15. With my current teams, this isn't too much of a problem, but it definitely will be in future. So in a second, we'll see some portals popping up in the top left corner where the oozes will start to spawn. I use Volker. Volker or Raph are ideal for this because they have self-sustained. Raph Awaken 5, that is. Volker just passively does. And this is enough to make sure that she can kill both of these ads. She blocks them from fusing together, and she can keep herself alive from any damage she takes. Now, if you're in a situation where you're not doing enough damage to the boss to kill them soon enough, eventually the spawns will be too fast and you won't get through them. I haven't placed any proper DPS on the boss. As you can see, it's just Azhor. Now we have spawns in the bottom right. So I can place down Raph to deal with the right side. He's also got good self-sustain at Awakening 5, so he'll be fine in this situation. But I'll leave it at this for now, and you'll see what happens. I will probably fail due to not having enough DPS output. Lightlock can cover this, fortunately. There is a problem using someone like Eloin. Her healing range is not quite enough to reach all the way over to that right side. So again, I like to have DPS who can self-sustain to some degree, but Volker does help with that. And now you can see in the top right, we have even more spawns coming in. Fortunately not oozes though, but we're now in a situation where we're getting swarmed. So there is kind of a time limit, not really. It's more like you've got, eventually the spawns will peak up to such a degree where you can't kill them fast enough, and it will just kind of churn to a halt. So quickly, I'll just show you how I would place this. I won't comment. I've kind of given you enough commentary for now, and we'll see how this plays out. So you can see having Wrath deal the damage on the right side was enough to basically finish the encounter, but the enemies are starting to spawn. Something to keep in mind, having Wrath here hitting is great, but the enemies will actually fuse with the boss on the diagonal. If nothing is blocking the diagonal, they will just slip through there. So this is not a block. This does not prevent enemies from getting to the boss. This is just so I can deal some damage to the boss. So that works for this time. But now that we've finished stage 15, the final band is 16 to 18, the last mission in the game. So we will do stage 18, and things get a lot trickier here. So I will change my roster for this. So this is the team I would normally use for stage 18, minus the last two. I just kind of brought them along just in case. Before I forget, I shall turn off the power of dominance. That means I lose the 30% stat bonus, and we shall give this a crack. I have, for my fighters, I pretty much have these 5 at the top. I have Captain Reeve as my defender, and I have Elwyn as my healer. So let's get started. So I place Captain Reeve, my defender, here. I place Elwyn here. Note, Elwyn does not heal the right side. I need to block the left and the right. I need to deal with oozes in both the top left and the top right corners. So I will place Salavic here to block the left side. I will place Salazar here to block the right side. And I like to use Elwyn's heal to keep my Salazar topped off. The thing I love about Salazar in this mission is his ultimate has a good reach, so he can help with the other side if you're watching patient. If you're paying attention, you can notice that maybe you can do this to help. But generally it's great to save his ultimate to wipe out the adds. Now I need to be careful about the spawns on the top, so I will place down my 2 up here. Now that's okay, I can ult to get some damage on the boss going. But primarily I have Arrogance down. He is a very good damage dealer, and if you place him like this, he can help deal with this wave as well. And as usual, I'm relying on my Elwyn's heal to reach Salazar. If you use a light lock, or if you use a healer with a longer range, then you won't need to rely on this, obviously. This is just because her reach is low enough. And because I've got the extra placement heroes, I can just drop down a Gluttony to maybe just soak a hit from the Slashing Blitz ultimate, and it will help keep everyone else alive, which can be quite nice. So there, you saw he died from that, but that's okay. And I can keep just dropping these guys as fodder. So you see the way I'm doing it, I have 4 key fighters down to block, I have a 5th one to help deal damage to the boss, and I have a defender. So I think at minimum you really need 5 fighters and a defender. If your fighters are a lot better than mine, then maybe you can get by with less, but this is what works for me. And you can see these guys in the top corners not having any issues and not dropping low on health either, as they both self-sustain. And you see Scorch dying, but again, I don't really mind. He is just there to help. And I'll just track this guy down just to buy Salazar some time dealing with the ad. So 1 did get through, so the boss did get healed there. So maybe my placement this time wasn't ideal. But I think we should still be okay. But we'll see how this goes. I'm going to ult to buy myself a little bit of time. Get this ult going to help stun. And you can see I have lost my Arrogance. So this is a little bit dicey. And you see if you take too long at the end, a whole bunch of oozes arrive. So this run wasn't successful. I'll play with my placement a bit, but broadly speaking, that is roughly how I'll do it. I'll just quickly restart with a more optimal placement and let it play through so you can see how it actually works if you do it properly. So I will disappear for now, and you can see how my normal run looks. So you can see that was a much cleaner run. I just wanted to leave the first one and didn't want to remove it just so you can see how 2 different runs go. This one was obviously placed a lot better. If you notice, I stacked the people on the left a bit and I have my Arrogance shooting across. That way I had Arrogance and Salazar hitting the boss from an earlier phase. The issue I had in the previous run, I did not have enough damage on the boss early enough. I was taking too long to spread my heroes out and to get them around the boss. So this method worked a lot better, as I have my heroes surrounding the boss and dealing damage from a much earlier phase. Just so you can see the damage graphs, you can see a lot of damage from Salazar. This is mainly from his ultimate. The splashes on Slashing Blitz are fantastic. And Arrogance is great, just the ability to hit the boss and deal with the lane at the same time. So that's pretty much what I would suggest. This is kind of the layout. This is how I run these. There's obviously going to be a lot of different ways. Do leave comments below for other people to let them know how you handle the Artifact Raid, especially stage 18. And if there's any tips or tricks that I've missed out on that I haven't come across. And one other last hint for you. There is a common event that you get that will pop up. This one, Brave Conquest. Earn points by looting gears and meteorites from Gear Raid and Artifact Fragment Raid. The Artifact Fragment Raid actually gives you more points, especially 18, than Gear Raids. If you want to complete this quickly, then the Artifact Fragment Raid is definitely one I would suggest doing. It's very, very good and very efficient for clearing Brave Conquest quickly and for the least stamina required. So, to wrap things up, I would again suggest make sure you have a bunch of very strong fighters. The Nightmare faction is pretty much perfect for this. Make sure you have a good healer, and a good tank goes a long way. Other than that, it will be a bit of trial and error, as you saw with my run. Let me turn my power dominance back on. And yeah, that pretty much sums it up. So thank you for watching. Best of luck with your run. Good luck. Have a nice one, and bye-bye.